Welcome to another episode of We Got This series. So this series is dedicated to exploring mental health as I interview different professionals that will help us navigate what exactly is mental health, while also offering guidance and actionable steps that we can take each day to protect and ultimately strengthen our own mental health. So a quick disclaimer, the purpose of this series is to educate, empower, and encourage, and it's not to prevent or discourage anyone from actually seeking medical attention if needed. So in today's conversation, I'm super excited to talk to Dr. Barry. So Dr. Barry is not only my chiropractor, but he's also a professional that I have a world of respect for because he truly values people and he's helping countless people improve their physical and mental well-being, just like myself. So during our conversation, Dr. Barry speaks about the need for us to optimize our functions while minimizing our stresses. And far too often, we only think about, okay, what can I do to better my situation instead of what can I stop doing to better my situation. Honestly, sometimes not doing something can be way more impactful. Honestly, it's a lot easier and it has a greater impact on us than trying to add more to our plate because at the end of the day, we're super busy. So ask yourself this, are there things in your life that you can stop doing that would have a pivotal impact in your own mental health? Possibly it's not watching certain programs, not listening to certain types of music, or honestly hanging out with certain types of people that you feel just constantly drag you down. So something to consider as you listen to our conversation. Well, let's get to it. 2, 1. Hey everyone, super excited for today as I get to have another interview with someone I really respect who happens to be my chiropractor, Dr. Barry. For those that haven't checked it out, he joined us episode 32, where we really dived into his story, what he really manifests on, what he believes in this his chiropractic space, but as well as just living an active lifestyle. So I'm really grateful that he's joined again. So welcome, Dr. Barry. This is awesome.
Hey, thanks for having me. I sure enjoyed the first time, so ready to have more fun.
Awesome. Yeah, no, this will be good. It's part of our We Got This series, which is all about mental health. Obviously, the podcast space is in transportation, but I think we can commonly agree that we're all human, and mental health isn't something that is we're not invincible to it. We can't just say nope, doesn't impact me. So this series is really close to my heart, and just through our conversations, I know you really care about this topic as well. So yeah, I appreciate you joining.
Yeah, it's huge, and someone could say, what's a guy that runs a trucking podcast and a guy who's a chiropractor, talking together have to do with mental health? But I think people will see pretty quickly mental health impacts every person in every way. So as often as random people can talk about it and bring it to light, I think it's going to help everybody.
Agreed. Yeah, I completely agree. So to start us off, can you give us a quick recap? Who is Dr. Barry? And then we can dive in.
Oh gosh, yeah. It's I did make notes, not on this question, but I learned the last time we spoke, it was just so much fun, and we probably went over time, but it's literally like drinking off the fire hose. So I want to keep things as narrow as we can, just to keep people interested and focused. So you know what, I've been a chiropractor for 26 years. I was born and raised here in Calgary. Come from a big family, all sisters, and just a great family. And I learned early on just to follow my dreams and do what I want to do. And that path somehow led me to chiropractic. I had always had an interest in fitness, in sports, in health and wellness, and going to U of C, getting a degree, on my way to a degree in exercise physiology. It had a lot of interest, but I didn't know where the direction was. And I was introduced to a chiropractor and changed my life forever, and just the right time in my life to pursue something. So yeah, I went down to California, got my degree, swore I'd never come back to Calgary again, ended up in Seattle, created, owned, and ran a practice for 18 years. And our kids got to the age where it was move back home, now or never. And we moved back home 6 years ago. We're back home to Calgary. So one of the best decisions ever. And here I am now running my practice within another practice with Dr. Mark, another wonderful chiropractor who I align with very well. And just bringing health to people and changing people's health and their minds for that matter, and how they see their health and whatnot. And it's been wonderful.
Incredible. Yeah, I love the pivotal moments there, the pivotal impacts where you knew what you enjoyed, but there was a lack of direction. You met the chiro, all of a sudden there's direction, and then never coming back. Went to Seattle, another beautiful city, which I would have understood if you stayed there, but same thing, there's decisions to be made and pivotal impact. Here you are. And yeah, you've had countless impacts in my own journey with my family. Obviously, my wife, Kathy, she joins she comes and sees you, which is great. And yeah, we were talking prior, just you do this crazy thing in my neck that is like the biggest relief, because I fight like intense headaches, and I'm like, yes, they're gone. So but yeah, that's a really fascinating journey. And it's nice that, again, when we've collided in this sense where we're able to have these conversations now publicly, I think it's just really powerful. So it's awesome.
Yeah.
So one thing that you mentioned was you help with people's obviously physical health, but also mental health. Can you kind of highlight I think everyone can define mental health a little differently. So in your opinion, what is mental health?
Gosh, when we first started talking about this, I was thinking about just this question and what is mental health? It's with respect to health in general, it's optimizing whatever aspect, mental, physical, emotional, chemical, whatever aspect we're talking about, it's optimizing function of that and minimizing the detriment or the stress or the effects on that. So when it comes to mental health, I think, everything we do begins in our head, right? It begins as a thought, a reaction. Mental health is it's really the ground floor of the decisions that we make on a day-to-day basis. So if we are mentally healthy, those decisions are appropriate, or they're beneficial, or they help you or others or whatever. And if they're not healthy, then they can create issues and problems and whatnot.
Powerful. Yeah, that's a really good definition. Capitalize our function, minimize the stress. I think that's a really, really powerful way to summarize a very broad topic. And yeah, I think that really ties into the point of protection. And similar to, obviously, we want to protect our physical health. You're not going to do something where you're going to it could be walking across the street, you look both ways, to what are we putting into our heads and protecting that. I think I really like that, though. That's a really strong statement. I actually wrote that down, so appreciate that. Yeah. So obviously then it is important to protect our mental health.
Oh gosh, it's paramount. I mean, again, without that, I guess that guiding light or principle, we could go any which way. So that has to be strong and stable.
Yeah. Okay, good. Well, I'm glad we're in agreement. Otherwise, we may have to turn off this episode. No, I'm just kidding. But I think that's really strong. And again, speaking on behalf of, speaking on part of the transportation industry, I shouldn't say on behalf of, I think a lot of times we get stuck in our own heads. I hear a lot, I've always done it that way. And I'm like, okay, well, that way could be suffering, or that way could be adding additional stress. And it's nice to see your perspective just on the importance of eliminating the stress. So that way, you're acting and you're responding accordingly, and you're not freaking out at something that's really minuscule or nothing like that. I think that's super powerful.
Totally.
Yeah. So would you say then, in a day-to-day, regardless of profession, there's certain things that happen that the outcome could be negative, and then you can strengthen your mental health to maybe decrease how you respond? So if it's someone cut you off in traffic, instead of blowing up, you can coach yourself to kind of respond accordingly? Or do you think once you've had a bad day, that's it, you're just going to be temperamental the rest of the time?
Yeah, no, that the second option is absolutely not true. We have to gain and maintain control over our emotions, and it comes from really having that stable, that mental foundation and there are all sorts of tools and things to count to 10 or take 3 deep breaths, or And honestly, I didn't write the book on these. I'm as guilty as anybody for blowing up in traffic, but I learned from experiences as well. And I know that when I'm stuck behind someone going 80 and 100 zone, and I'm getting all mad because I have to be somewhere and it's their fault, and then I pull up alongside, and I see that it's some poor old lady who's 120 years old, or it's an 18-year-old girl or boy like my son who's 18 and drives carefully, thankfully. Then I instantly go, oh my gosh, I'm such an idiot. I'm the one who's in the wrong, not this person. So being able to course correct and learning how to course correct in an instant, I think that's what was one of the tools that I think is essential. But it's a tool is like I'm talking about is like a skill, right? It's something that has to be practiced. So in order to do that, you have to think about it. You have to know it. You have to own it. You can't just throw your arms up in the air and say, oh, that's just the way I am. If the way you are isn't helping you or isn't helping other people, then change that, right? So it takes a good look in the mirror, but it can be changed.
Yeah, I like that.
I'm testimony to that.
I'm guilty of that too. We'll be driving, I'm like getting hot. I'm like, man, what's going on? And then yeah, you see the actual driver and you have this, like, I call it instant empathy, where yeah, it's like, oh, okay. And then yeah, you have to self-reflect and yeah.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
listen, there's been so many times where I've heard this too, and you never know what's going on in somebody else's head or brain or skin, right? And maybe they're having the world's worst day. Maybe they're on their way to doing something horrible and tragic to themselves, right? You just don't know. So as soon as you put yourself into someone else's shoes, for me anyway, that's what helps me calm down. Counting to 10, deep breathing, maybe that too for me. But again, you got to find what works for you, and for me, it does come down to that, like you said, that empathy, and just you never know. But what if, right? Just that whole what if statement. Like, what if they're having the world's worst day? Can you cut them some slack? Sure.
Yeah, I like that, and I like that we're aligned with that, because those are places that my head goes when I have my reality checks too. And I like to course correct in an instant, because I think a lot of times there's a crash course, or there's the, okay. And maybe like I like taking a deep breath, and I coach Avery, my 11-year-old, on that all the time. Like, you can see someone's getting worked up, just take a deep breath. It's pretty shocking what that quick, it's the action, sure, but it's the pause in your mental distress I find helps too, where I'm like, you're focusing on taking a deep breath. You're no longer focusing on the hornet's nest in your brain. And then, yeah, that's sometimes enough just to be like, okay, I'm in reality. Like, you get snap back in reality or whatever. So, but yeah, I think that's a crucial step. And honestly, counting helps too. I remember that when I had ADHD when I was a kid, and that's one thing that I wouldn't call her a counselor. She was a school counselor, so I don't know what training she had, but that's one thing that she would always say is count to 10 backwards. She's like, focus on the number. And I'm like, so even as an adult, there's times where I'm like, oh, I'm mad, but okay. And then, yeah. And I know anger is one part. There's plenty of emotions that impact your mental health, but I think in transportation, anger is something we can feel fast. Disappointment's another thing, but yeah, I think there's a lot there for sure.
And even, more pertinent to people who drive the big trucks. And I because that's one area where I'm driving and I see, we're coming up to a red light and a big, huge truck that has to slow down to the light. And there's 15 cars getting in front of him or her, and because they know there's a space and they're going to get ahead. And that detracts from the focus of that driver, because that person needs more runway to slow down. And I mean, and just so many traffic area examples of that for truckers, and I just think, oh my gosh, I don't know if I could do it.
Well, yeah, I was in a conversation not too long ago specifically on that, and I'm like, try, even if you're in a passenger vehicle, imagine yourself hauling 100,000 pounds, but you can't really imagine unless you've done it. But you're really heavy, and when you apply the brake, it doesn't stop right away because there's brake lag and all of these things. Do that 15 times to get to a customer location, and then the customer tells you, A, you can't use my bathroom, and B, you're in the way, and they talk to you in tone and they call you an idiot, just as a random so that's part of the example I was trying to picture when I because I coach like giving empathy to drivers all the time because I really respect the profession. But as people, I'm like, you and I don't deal with that going through the office. Like, sure, we may get cut off and it's annoying, but I'm like, let's put ourselves in their position for a second. And how does that impact their mental state? Why are they responding? Or like, yeah, there's a lot there, and we don't have to go too deep in that side of it, but exactly what you just said. When you get cut off 15 times, and that's your safe stopping distance to adjust, just to get somewhere where someone doesn't even want you to be. They just want what's in the back of your trailer. Like it's a challenge for sure.
Oh my gosh, I can only imagine.
Yeah, no, that's intense. So, but yeah, I guess keeping it to the human element, would you say then no one is immune to having maybe not a permanent damage, but temporary damage to our mental health? No one's immune to that?
No one's immune to it. Everything's an experience. So, and again, trying not to delineate physical from a mental experience. What's a physical one? You take a hockey puck to the eye, you get a black eye. Well, no one's immune to that. So you take repeated abuse or a single episode of abuse. Oh, you're just this, or whatever that offhand comment is. That we're a sponge, right? So that comes in somewhere. And it's processed. It's processed through our nervous system. It has to go and sit somewhere. And it's embedded in our memory so that if it happens again, oh, well, there's reinforcement of that comment or a similar comment. And the more that's reinforced, the greater the damage. And like more hockey pucks to the eye, right? So those are just as, if not more, I think, damaging collectively over time.
It's powerful. Yeah, I wouldn't have thought of it that way, but I like that analogy. I'm going to I'll reshare that because it's true where you can only take so much and you can only get so many black eyes before something has to give. So yeah, that's a really good analogy. Yeah. So when you're working with clients, and obviously you don't have to be specific with a client, and you notice, like, I think you do a good job at it because we have good conversation, and I try to track consistencies in people. If someone always says good with a certain tone, and then the next time you see them and they don't say good or their tone is shifted, do you pay attention to stuff like that? And if you do, and I ask kind of, I think you do just based off of our conversations, do you put yourself in a position to try and better someone's mental health while working on their physical health? Is that important to you?
For sure it is. They're intertwined 100%. So you cannot, gosh, again, drinking off the fire hose. There's so many directions I could go, but you can't change one thing without impacting all the others. So when you were working on someone's physical health, say as a chiropractor, but they don't want to heal, or someone is telling them that they'll never get better, or there's countless examples of that, right? Then it's just not going to change. So when I check in with someone, and I'm careful with my language too, I say, well, hey, how you doing, Josh? When I say that, the most common reaction I get is, good, how are you? And my instinct is to go, well, we're not here for me. Who cares about me? What I mean is, how are things going? How are you healing? How are things changing, right? That type of thing. So that's on me. I have to change that direction, and I do often. So yes, I listen, I observe, and yeah, the languaging people use, how they react, is a huge indicator as to how everything is doing. So I think I touched on maybe a few things there, but is that okay?
That was awesome. Yeah, you're so one of the biggest compliments I can give you is the fact that you elevate my energy. And I remember who said it, but I remember years ago I learned the fact that someone has, like, energy is addictive, like not holistic and woo-woo, but just your persona. And when you enter a room, if everyone's meh, naturally, unless you're really mindful, you're going to be meh by the end of that meeting. But if people are high energy, when you leave, you're high energy. And that's something that I can have a really stressful day. I know you're going to say, hey, Josh, how are you? Even if my answer is, yeah, I'm good. Yeah, whatever. You're always, I'm great. And I'm like, well, yeah, I want to be great. So I think that's a really, to me, it's instant. And I think I can't be alone when I say that too, where you do a really good job elevating people's mood. So maybe mood's a better word than energy. But I think just, yeah, that's something I've always wondered too. I'm like, okay, there has to be a strategy. I think naturally you're in a good mood, like you live a really good life, which is really nice just as a witness to it. But I think, yeah, there's a strategy there, which helps with people's recovery, because if they're like, well, if he can be good, I can be good. If he can be great, I can be great. And the impact just in our minds too, I think is big for sure. Yeah.
And that's my mindset, right? If someone can do it, I can do it. If someone can be that way, I can be that way. And the little spin, and I love this comment is, do you light up a room, or when you enter a room, do the lights go on or do the lights go off, right? And something like that. And I really like that, because I think it's true. So a comment on that is, I don't want to dish what's going on in my life on people and bring negative energy to a healing environment. I'm the person that's going to provide that healing environment, and I'm going to perform a service to promote and boost healing. And that's really that's my role. So I'm no good at faking it. Like if I'm just not, and I can't do it. I'm not authentic, and I just don't. I think I'm transparent. I think people see right through that. So for me, the greatest way to not have to fake it is to live it. And in that case, I have to make sure I'm doing the things that allow me to live it. So, and it's work. It takes effort. It takes repetition. So I do. I listen to other people who boost me up. I read, or I watch, or I hang out with the people who do that. And it's the effort that gets me where I want to be. And it allows me to be at my best when I'm doing what I do to others. So, if I think maybe one of the directions is, well, what do you do if you're not around other people? And I'm in a truck for 8 to 12 to 18 hours at a time. There's no one else around me. Well, then I don't have to be a certain way to perform for anybody else. And I will flat out disagree with that, because the most important person that you have to impress that upon is yourself. And it just so happens in my vocation, I have to myself, because it's then what I do for other people or to other people. So, but it always benefits me first. And then it's just a trickle down effect to those I'm around. So if you're not around other people, at least you're doing it to yourself, for yourself. And who knows, then you come into contact with other people, and it affects the people cutting you off, or the person that doesn't allow you to use the restroom, and you get to, because you believe so much in yourself, I think those things just won't happen to people like you, right? If you put yourself up there, people are going to not only offer you the restroom, they're going to give you the complimentary bottle of water on the way out. I don't know. And I'm just saying that, right? So it just, you create the world you're in, but it's your responsibility. It's my responsibility. And there's a pathway, and you just got to walk it.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. And I think what you mentioned on what you listen and watch and who you hang out with, even if you're by yourself. So I was going to ask about isolation and what you can do to, I think isolation, imprisonment is one thing. Yeah. Isolation in a work environment is another. So I don't want to talk about imprisonment, obviously, but what you mentioned about what you're listening to, and honestly, like, no bash to the radio stations, but you suck. No, I can't listen to it. I'm like, I don't care about what happened to so-and-so 19 miles, whatever. So yeah, my family gets irritated because I'm like, let's just put on some either good music where it's uplifting, like the beat itself is uplifting, the lyrics are, or I listen to a lot of podcasts solely for that purpose. That's part of the reason why I started this podcast, is connecting leaders like yourself. Hey, let's create a pivotal impact. Let's create a positive change in the lives of others, because yeah, it really does impact you. If you're listening to like gore metal, or if you're listening to something a little more like, here, let's feed your being, perfect. Yeah. And But yeah, I agree. And I see that too. Like I monitor professional drivers like super closely, and I can tell who spends a little bit more time just working on themselves because they're a little more chipper, they're a little more problem solving. And when I teach customer service, I'm in that same headspace. I'm like, prime yourself for that moment. And you do that by what you listen to and monitoring it, what you're watching. Is it just violent films? Is it successful? Like whatever that is. And then, like you said, who are you hanging out with? Because if you're a bunch, the Karen term, if you're around a bunch of negative Nancy's that are just bickering, it's like, okay, well, naturally you're going to start bickering because you are the top 5 or 6 people you hang out with. But yeah, you can have control with all of that. And I like what you said with the pathway too, because I think a lot of times people don't take ownership. Do you know who Les Brown is actually? Have you heard it?
I've heard of Les Brown.
He's from the States. He's like a motivational speaker, super good guy. And he said, we're all self-made, only the successful will admit it.
Yeah.
So if you're not living a life of success, you have more of a victim mentality. If you're living a life of success in your own environment, you have an ownership mentality. And I think that really aligns with what you've just shared for sure.
Oh gosh, absolutely. Yeah. And I've plagiarized, stolen from all those speakers and the successful people that I love to listen to and read as well.
Totally. So when we're thinking about protection, I love the fact that we talked about listening and watching and who you hang out with, but in ourselves, what are some red flags that we can monitor to say, hey, maybe I'm in a down mood, I'm in a snappy mood, maybe you're tired, but I know those are just really high level, but are there red flags that we as people should look out for to say, hey, we're probably not in the right state of mind and we can start working on that?
Totally. And to me, again, coming back to kind of taking care of ourselves, I think the biggest red flag is our self-talk. What are we saying to ourselves? And I've said this 100 times in the past where, do we get up in the morning, look in the mirror and say, oh, look at that reflection and say, oh, you're fat, stupid, and ugly, right? And if that's your self-image, understand it's an image, right? So that's what you're putting out there. That's what you're portraying. So if that's what you think of yourself, then what are other people, those that know you and those that don't know you, what are they going to see? Not overtly, but subconsciously, right? So that to me is the biggest red flag. It's the place to start. So it's that self-talk. What are you saying to yourself? And as easy as it is to say something detrimental, say something positive. And that's known as an affirmation. And so this might be part 2, but for me, the affirmations, I used to think were woo-woo, right? I've heard Tony Robbins talk about them. I've heard Mark Victor Hansen, Chicken Soup for the Soul guys talk about affirmations. And it took me, of course, like it's always done, takes me a while to catch on and go, oh, well, if the ultra successful people are doing it, and success measured in success of a person, not their money and all that stuff, but then maybe it will work for me. But one of them said, I can't remember who it was now, but said, I get it if you don't like affirmations, but understand that everything you say is an affirmation. So when you look in the mirror and you say you're fat, stupid, and ugly, that's an affirmation. That's what you're telling yourself. So if you're saying that, or if you're saying, oh, she'll never go out with me, or I'll never make this green light, right? Those are all affirmations. So whether you like them or not, you're saying them. So if you're saying those ones, why don't you say some that are positive? Spin it, and write them down. I've had different written ones over the years that I would say. I don't do it so much anymore, to be honest, but I used to say them every single day. When our first boy was born, we created a little affirmation for him, and we would say it to him every night. And just, again, program into your head what it is that you want to see and what you want to come out. And it feels weird. It feels weird saying, I'm a huge success and today's going to be a better day than yesterday. Well, that feels weird. I don't know if it's going to be. Of course you don't know, but you don't know if you're going to make that green light or not either. But may as well plan on making it, or rather than not, right? So So those are, so to come back to the original question, self-talk, it really is the pinnacle of it.
Yes. Yeah, I completely agree. And I think that brings the point. There's the conscious mind, subconscious mind, and the fact that the subconscious mind has no filter. It's just the second layer per se. And it's just whatever you're thinking and saying, boom, 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 it's hitting it. And yeah, you're right though. There's power in affirmations. I read one every morning where part of it's family, part of it's life, and part of it's success. And again, I agree. We all define success a little differently, where I think too many people just put value or success as a value of dollar when I see success as impact. And it's like, okay, well, first you got to impact yourself. And if you're not going to go to battle with a soft spoon, you're going to go to battle with a sharp sword. So I'm a big believer in that too. And then I forget what the RAS, you know, RAS, it's like your brain protection. It's your filtration system. I forget what it stands for.
Called the reticular activation system.
There you go. Yeah. So you're a lot smarter than I am. So thanks. But yeah, I think, you know who Ed Milet is? Have you heard of Ed Milet before?
I don't think so.
Another really good guy, but he did a kind of a breakdown on the RAS. And he's like, you go to a car dealership and he's just like, you see a really fancy red car. You're like, I've never seen this before. I want to buy this red car. You go buy that red car. You leave the car dealership 5 blocks from home. You see 15 of them.
Yeah.
And it's because your brain can only handle so much. So it's like, okay, why don't you prime yourself, like you were just talking about, to see the success? You don't know if the light's going to turn green. We have no clue, but wouldn't you rather optimistically and strategically say, yes, the light's green. Yes, the light's green, because I think all of that really does work in our favor, especially when we're talking about protecting our mental health, where it's a full cup mentality versus I have no water and I'm thirsty mentality. So no, I think that's a really good way to combat the red flags too, because it's effort. Similar to physical fitness, it's a combat effort. I think it's the same with mental health as well.
Yep, you have to do it, and you can't ever stop.
No, I agree.
Zig Ziglar said, and he gives his quote that was great. He's like, you know, people say, what was it? It was affirmations or self-talk is repetitive. I have to do it every day. He said something about, well, so is bathing, right? So you still have to do it every day.
Yes.
Every day. If you want to be clean, you got to bathe. You know, if you want to sharpen the sword, or if you want to have a sharp sword, you got to sharpen the sword. So
no, I agree. I love Zig Ziglar. Well,
I know I totally butchered that quote, by the way, but
no, that was perfect. Yeah.
Along
one of my favorite quotes of him too, and I think it meets this conversation, is you're not a tree, you can get up and move. And I think a lot of times we sit in our own suffering just because you think there's nothing else. So if it's a job you hate, if it's a nasty relationship, if it's terrible negative friends, it's like, they're not doing you any favors. You are not a tree, get up and leave. And I really respect that. But yeah, Zig's awesome. I like Tom too, his son. I follow him pretty steadfast through email and social. And he actually, my old coach, his name's Sean, they're good friends, Tom, and he used to know Zig too. So there's a lot of history there. But yeah, I'm right in that space too, which I just like our alignment. I think it's powerful.
Totally. Yeah, and it just shows you always have to work on yourself. You just always do, and you could be different ways, and that whole comfort zone too, right? Comfort bubble, whatever it is, you have to push, you have to get outside of it to grow, you know, and that's where growth comes from, is outside the comfort zone, and it's comfortable for a reason. You don't have to do anything. So, like you say, the tree that's stuck in place, it can't move. But we have to move in order to get somewhere different. And it's comfort zone for a reason. It's uncomfortable to get out. But you know, another saying, I love sayings too, but what would you rather have, the discomfort of staying where you are, or the discomfort of growth? And there's discomfort either way. So I'd always rather push that boundary and see what's what.
Totally agree. Yeah, and I think a lot of our industry is about that too, because we're always growing, developing, and there's a lot of tough people in our industry, which I think sometimes is a crutch. Oh, I have to go through this. I'm like, yeah, but you can navigate strategically. You can make smart decisions to better that struggle instead of just sit in that suffering. But yeah, I agree with that for sure. Yeah. So for people that it doesn't have to be, you can go wherever you want, and we're talking resources. But are you aware of any if it's a good self-help book, if it's a good audio book, if it's, hey, check out, like we talked about Zig Ziglar, which is awesome. Chicken, you said, I always get it wrong. It's Chicken Soup for the Soul, correct?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I always butcher the name, but I'm like, yeah, I haven't thought about that in a while. But
Yeah.
is that kind of where you would suggest people go? Not necessarily like there's a medical standpoint, which I totally respect. Like there's a point where you need to see a doctor or you need to see
Yeah.
maybe a counselor, which I have all of the empathy and sympathy in the world for that situation.
Totally.
More so if we're trying just to keep ourselves above water, really keep our cup full. Do you know, or would you recommend any resources in that space?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of authors, and they almost always say same things, right? So you're talking about guys, and I've heard the analogy, of course, with the red cars, and so there's Brian Covey, or Robin Sharma is a wonderful author. He wrote The Monk Who Sold His Ferrari, and it's a fable, right? So it's a short, quick, easy read, but it's a really good perspective changer. And I love, we talk about, you brought up my pivot points in my life. And I like those reads that kind of create a little pivot point, a little change in perspective as I'm reading and going through. The Chicken Soup for the Soul guys, they were really, really good, because they then went, so they've done Chicken Soup for the chiropractic soul, Chicken Soup for the running soul, Chicken Soup for the mechanical engineer. I mean, they've done them, right? So they've rebranded that and done remarkably well at, yeah, of course, for them, wonderfully financially. They're big philanthropists and whatnot. Now they do a lot of good for a lot of people, but they've really narrowed that niche down so that those books can speak to you. I don't know if there is one with respect to, drivers and whatnot, but it might be worth looking up. Also, something that's helped me is I learn a lot from other people. So I love other people's stories. So biographies. I love reading about people that have, climbed that ladder, made it big, and it's kind of a similar formula, right? They make it so big and then they crash and burn, and then they hop back up to the humble place where they should have been all along, right? But so oftentimes it takes that trajectory to be able to recognize it, right? You have to climb up and fall down the other side of that mountain before you realize you shouldn't have been up the mountain in the first place. So, but I just appreciate those. I like hearing the stories on the other end, how people have become humble. And I have always liked that. And that's been an influence for me. And just it's kind of maybe steered me a little bit in how you don't want to be there, so don't do that and that. And I'm not a good affirmation, but I can be an idiot that way too, where I kind of have to learn by tripping over something, but to not try to step over it. So, but learning that I'm not alone in that journey. Also, one of my, I kind of alluded to it earlier, if someone else has done it, well, then I can do it. And I think about this with respect to illness and disease. If there's some disease that kills 99% of people that get that disease, my first and immediate thought is always, who's the 1%? What's with that person? What made her or him not like all the others and be able to beat the disease, right? Like there's like kind of like the tree in the soil, right? And it's just one of those thoughts that I get. I just think, well, if she or he can do it, I think about, well, then I can do it. If 99 other can't, but he or she can, well, then I'm going to follow that person, not the other 99, right? So, and that just comes, I think, from, again, building that mental fortitude to realize the options from the beginning.
Powerful. Yeah, I think that's fantastic. And I think a lot of the strength behind it is the effort that it takes, but it's not impossible. And I like that your brain gravitates to the 1%, And well, if they can do it, I can do it. How'd they do it? Well, I'm going to do it. And I commonly live in that mindset too, where I'm like, I'm not afraid to suck at something. Like, okay,
Totally.
like you make fun of me. Okay. And, but yeah, I think that's a really, not how, that's a really wise place to live too. And I think, especially to our listeners too, because different people, different floats, different walks of life, which is perfect, but we all have the opportunity of getting that much better every single day. But it does take that little bit of effort and getting uncomfortable. But yeah, I'm going to I haven't seen Chicken Soup for the soul books for truck drivers, but I'm going to look, because if so, I'm going to promote that, because I think that's a really smart. I didn't know they went to that depth, but that's really smart, because we all have different journeys, obviously. And when you can actually feel like, man, they're relating with me, they understand my problems. Oh, that's how you overcome that problem. I think that's powerful. And I like biographies too for that, where I'm like Richard Branson's The Virgin one. I'm like, you did what with what to do what? Like, just, yeah, I love that. Just I don't appreciate the crash and burns. Like, I don't wish that on people, but I like reading and watching other people that obviously they've been there before me, so I can follow part of their journey. And like you said, you can trip, perfect, you fall forward, you get back up. But yeah, it's nice to see okay, they found their sweet spot. Okay, that's how you navigate that. Or you read I don't know, say a 5,000 word book, and there's one nugget in there. I'm like, it was so worth my time just because of that piece. But yeah, those are really good advice for sure.
Yeah, and those nuggets come to you, right? But you have to read it to find the nuggets. And yeah, him and Warren Buffett. I mean, so many of these people, like, you think, well, they must have 48 hours in their 24-hour day, and they don't. They just know how to utilize the day. So yeah, if you're on the road and you're driving, what can you learn? What can you do? And not to, because again, my initial thought when you said there was incarcerated folks that have all the time on their hands, but there are some of them that have taken that time, 45 years, and they've gotten law degrees and they've become experts in something. And it's just wherever you are in life, take that first step. And we talk about it's easy, just pick up a book and start reading. And I know that with mental health, it isn't that easy. I know that when people are depressed and they can't get off the couch, it's not, you don't just throw in some runners and go for a 10K run. No, there's not that. They can't even go upstairs to put on the shorts to go for a run. So there's a huge gap in even taking that first step. And some of it might be clinical. We kind of talked about that. That's not my expertise and the purpose of this talk. But there is something, if you can click something on, sometimes it's not even doing something, it's maybe not doing something. So just don't have that in the house that you're going to reach for and eat, that you connect those Oreo cookies to when you're really down. If you don't have an Oreo cookie to eat, then all of a sudden you've kind of broken that pattern a little bit. And by just removing some of those connections, can that bring you up just a hair? Hopefully. And if it can, well, then maybe there's an opportunity. So that, combined with not having a timeline, this time next month, I want to be running a 10K. No, that's a lot of pressure. It may take a whole month just to, not have Oreo cookies in the house, right? So it just starts with, creating something in your mind that says, yeah, I want to change. So.
Agreed. Yeah, I think that's a really good piece of advice too. Sometimes it's not doing, it's just not doing. And I think, yeah, if you want to call that self-inflicted, and maybe you didn't even know, and maybe you didn't know that if it was a food thing, if it was an audio thing, if it was the movies, if it was what you're surfing on your phone, it's like, put down the phone, just watch. But yeah, I think that's a really key piece of advice, that it's easy to get into a cycle. It's easy to feel trapped in that cycle. I've always done it this way. I've always had this for Tuesday night dinners. Okay, well, let's change it up. And then, yeah, I know there's a point where that's not my area of expertise at all, and I would never claim to be, but there is a point though for sure where it's breaking cycles and just changing habits, and it starts
Mhm.
literally with one. It's the baby steps. I love that analogy too, just one
For
small
sure.
step. Like it's, but yeah,
Yeah.
I think that's really, really wise advice. I'm glad you shared that.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So the yeah, just with respect to time, we are recording on a Saturday, which I'm super grateful for. And kind of as we come to a close, were there any final thoughts, wishes that you wanted to share, as well as if people were, I like throwing this out there just because I really respect you as a person and as a professional, but also just the advice that you give. So if you're comfortable just letting people know, hey, yeah, you can reach me here, or they can go through myself. I believe that's what we did last time. If people had questions, they can reach out to me. But is there an opportunity for people to get in contact with you? And were there anything that you would like to share as we come to a close?
Well, yeah, I'm always available. Whether people think, you know, they need me as a chiropractor for something or not, I always do an initial consult, which ferrets that out and determines whether I'm the right fit or if I should send you to someone else. So that's always on me, and I can be reached here at the clinic, or dr.barry@familywellnesscenter.com. Always happy to talk, even again, we have two ears, one mouth for a reason. I like to listen more than I talk. So I'm happy to hear and listen to what people have to say before I give any advice or direction. In terms of a final thought, you know, absolutely. I think, number one, surround yourself as much as you can with other people, with positive people, people who, try not to give your mind that opportunity to default to those old patterns of thinking. We've talked about some of these authors and this self-help industry that's worth billions and billions of dollars. And it's there for a reason, because you're not alone. You're not in this position. You're not the only one there. So it's okay to ask for help. It's okay to reach out. It's okay to, ask for a hug. It's okay, and there's a reason that more men choke to death than women. It's because when men choke on something, they leave the room. They don't want, it's embarrassing. They don't want other people to see them doing it. And then they want to take care of it, but they instinctively walk away rather than flag someone down and say, I'm choking. Like, that's a stat. And I think we just have this stoicism about, this is just like you said earlier, I am the way I am. Well, it could be changed. You are the way you are because of your past, and there's that saying, mother, father, preacher, teacher. It's our mother, our father, our teacher, our preacher that have said things to us, right? They've inundated this, money doesn't grow on trees, or you'll never amount to anything, or you're no good, or we're from this side of the tracks, right? Those are imprinted, like we said at the beginning. We're a sponge. Those soak in and they sit back there. So that when it comes time, now I'm going to take that opportunity. No, I'm not going to take that opportunity because I don't deserve it. Right. And that's just, oh my gosh, that's just so toxic. So yeah, final thoughts is it's not okay to suffer alone. Reach out for help and ask for help. Today's day and age, we're quite sensitive to different people, different, directions of people and whatnot. Embrace it. And we're here to help each other, right? And communicate and ask for help. Yeah, take advantage of the resources that are more available than you think they are. Be vulnerable, be open.
Power. Power. Totally agree. Yeah, I can't stand that toxic imprints where you're like, no, that's not me. No, that's not me. Why do I gravitate there? Why is that? Like, yeah, I think when you're in a state of fright, the first thing that comes to mind, I'm like, they said father, mother, teacher, preacher, because you're like, no, that's not me. No, that's not how I think. And then you have to be willing to, navigate through that. But I think that was really powerful. I really appreciate you sharing that. So
Yeah,
that was, wow.
for sure.
Yeah.
And just real quick too, because I had a woman as a patient come in, and she had said how, she's got fibromyalgia, she's got, Crohn's, she's overweight, she's diabetic, she's got all these things going on. She's got such bad hip pain, spinal pain, these things that I am helping her with. I'm kind of limited because she hurts so much and there's so much going on. But she went to a hip surgeon, a specialist. Took her 14 months to get in and finally see him. And his answer was, well, I don't know if it's coming from your back or your hip because you're so overweight. You need to lose weight. Go and lose weight and then we'll talk. And she lost it, right? And she lost it several times. And then she relayed that to me and I lost it. I want to, that's just not how you treat people, anybody. And when you're in a person of authority and power and help, and that's your solution, go lose weight, come back, and then I'll help you. No, people need hope. They need to know there's help, there's time, there's always hope, always hope. And I've often said, if some guy can run in the Olympics with 2 fake legs, against a bunch of athletes who have their real legs and be competitive, then I'm pretty sure we can help you in some way with your back or your hip pain or your weight or whatever it is, right? So, but we have to know who we are and who we're talking to, and the people are listening. Like she listens to him. He's a surgeon. Oh my gosh, he's a high profile surgeon. So when she's just a school teacher. She has to listen, right? And it's, oh my gosh, and that just drives me crazy. So in that vein, when you reach out for help, reach out, have that expectation, look for the answers that you want. I want to be able to walk without pain. So if he's going to say that, okay, next. So anyhow.
Yes. That's a really good point though. And sorry to hear that, because that gets me bothered, because anyway, I won't diss the individual, but
no.
At the same time, it's like, who are they? And I think a lot of times the people in power aren't mindful of what they're saying. And when someone feels like there is no hope, that's the focus, is there is hope. And I like that.
Right.
Exactly that expression. Hey, there's someone literally running a 100-meter Olympic race with fake legs. There's hope. You have something that you're going through, there is hope. But I think, that's being a light in a dark place is super important, but also being in a position of leadership is a privilege. It's not a right. And you, through that opportunity, you have to empower hope. You have to empower there's transformational change that is possible, and we will get through it. Not you're doomed and gloom. Sorry, see you later. So I think that's a huge takeaway for sure.
Totally. Gosh, even if his message was true and much of it was accurate, there's a way to say it, right? There's a way to dress it up. There's a way to say, to be real. But you sure do have to dress it up. And again, given him his he may have been having a bad day too, but you got to know where you're coming from. You got to know your audience. You have to know your influence and be able to, dress it up in a way that gives somebody hope. And you have to know that your impact on someone's mental state, especially in a clinical situation like that, but you never know what the state is. So, you know what, it's there's another great quote, and this is not by someone famous. It's by a woman who I think she opened her own winery. She said, it's much easier to live to do things 100% of the time than it is to do them 90% of the time. Meaning all or nothing. So so when I see you're it's this way. You can't walk in going, oh gosh, how is Dr. Barry going to be today? The whole leave your personal life on the tree outside. It's there it'll be there waiting for you when you leave. But when you're in here, so we tell our team this too, we're here to help each other, but we're here to make it a positive environment for everybody else. So anyways, it kind of winds all this in, I think, because we're so fragile, and the impact that we have, even as a friend or a coworker or a driver on the street, you have to have that kind of quick thinking mind to go, I wonder what kind of day they're having.
Totally agree. Yeah, and you guys live that really well. That was the first thing that I noticed. I even put that actually in a very positive review. Was I'm like, we're not a number. It's not like you have a here's your ticket slip. We'll call you when we're ready. Like a lot of environments are. It was, wow, you remember my name. Wow, you remember. Like to me, that really mattered. And being in an environment 365 where people are identified as numbers. Like professional drivers don't have names, they have numbers, they have truck numbers, they have trailer numbers. And it's just like, wow, you remembered my name. Wow, you asked me a question as a follow-up question from a week before. Like that type of stuff really does stand out. And again, it just shows the value of your leadership as you as a professional, as a person, because your team's awesome. And that's the biggest reason why we kept coming back was, wow, like it's just a really nice feeling, especially just knowing the day to day that, again, everyone lives different lives, but speaking for myself, where I'm like very uncommon. It's a sorry, who are you again type attitude versus, hey Josh, how are you? It's like, I'm good. So you guys, but I think what you're sharing though can be really applied in a lot of workplaces. Dispatched operations, like seeing eye to eye with people, not seeing it as a gross hierarchy. But a lot of what you shared is really, really applicable just in everyone's day to day, but also corporate culture, small business culture. I think it's really applicable.
I agree. Totally agree.
So, no, I appreciate that. Honestly, this was awesome. And I'm super grateful. And I really appreciate the honesty, the vulnerability. And I know mental health is a really broad topic, but you did a phenomenal job really highlighting what is it and the importance of protection, improvements, and just, being able to pivot. I think just you hit some really, really key points. So I'm super grateful for you coming today. This was awesome.
Okay. Yeah. And you're not alone. No one's alone.
Totally agree.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, thank you again, Dr. Barry. Really appreciate it.
Yeah. My pleasure, Josh.
Talk to you soon.
See you. Bye now.
Bye. Dr. Barry, honestly, thank you so much for the value that you shared on the podcast today and just how vulnerable you were and honest with you were. Honestly, mental health, as we discussed, is something we cannot take lightly. And there's a number of opportunities each day for us to take a breath, to limit the negative information entering our own minds. And I just think that's super important. And I really appreciate everything that you shared. So a key piece of advice Dr. Barry shared that really impacted myself was monitoring our self-talk. So what are we saying to ourselves and asking if this uplifts us or does this beat us down? So I encourage you to connect with Dr. Barry. Honestly, if you have questions about just our interview in general, or if you're interested in learning more about himself, learning more about his mindset on mental health, physical health, just how to live a healthy lifestyle. But also if you're in the Calgary surrounding areas and you're looking for a chiropractor, I highly, highly recommend that you connect with Dr. Barry. So I'm a patient of his going on almost a year. And he's helped me in a number of ways. And just, again, the fact that he's on the podcast is awesome. So I just really encourage you to reach out to him. I've included his contact details in the show notes below. And again, thank you so much, Dr. Barry, for hopping on. This was just a phenomenal conversation, very vulnerable conversation, but a lot of value shared, and I'm greatly appreciated. So friends in the industry, I honestly thank you for taking the time to listen to our conversation today. As I mentioned, this is part of our We Got This series, which is all about mental health. So if you're ever feeling like, hey, I don't feel like myself right now, I'm feeling down, you feel heavy, and a lot of it's in our minds, then I encourage you to reach out to someone that you trust just to talk about how you're doing. I honestly don't ever want someone to go through life with this burden of just a heavy mind. So reach out. You can reach out to myself. You can reach out to someone, like I said, that you know personally, but also you have a massive industry behind you where we call it the transportation industry that's full of countless people that really do have your back. And talking about mental health, there's a negative stigma that we're trying to break. It's not a weakness. It's not poor me. It's nothing about that. It's just making sure that you're actually doing okay. And that's the ultimate goal. So again, if you ever need to speak to someone, you can contact myself. All my contact details are always below. If you wanted to speak to someone that you trust, I highly recommend it. But also if you do feel like, hey, I'm at a point where I need to speak to a medical professional, please do so. Don't let your life just slip you by carrying this burden, because I'm very familiar just the impacts of negative mental health with anxiety, with depression, and it's just something that you don't need to battle alone. And ultimately together, I find that when I speak to me, my wife is my go-to, and one of my best friends, Joel. And when I have those conversations about how I'm truly doing, it's very rewarding because it's not necessarily the permanent solution, but just knowing that, okay, this was on my mind, it's off my plate. This was on my mind, it's off my plate. It's very, very healing. And yeah, just please don't bottle it up. So again, if I can ever be of service, if I can ever help, please reach out and we'll hop on a phone call, we'll hop on a Zoom call, whatever we got to do. But again, just don't do this alone. You have people that care about you. So thank you so much. So to all of our dedicated listeners, just want to say thank you. Honestly, just all of the support, the encouragement, it really does mean the world. And the greater the following, the greater the impact. So if I can have a positive impact, or if Dr. Barry had a pivotal impact in your life and you're able to then share that with someone else, the goal of the podcast was successful. So just really appreciate your time. This is the first time you ever checked out a Truck Focus podcast. Super grateful that you picked this episode. I have the world of respect for Dr. Barry and just talking about things like mental health and things that we can do, but also things that we should stop doing. I really hope it had a pivotal impact in your own life. So if you're listening to this, I ask you to subscribe to our YouTube channel, or if you're listening to this on a podcast, subscribe to the podcast channel, hit a like, share it to someone that you're like, hey, so-and-so's been kind of down lately, or, oh yeah, we were just talking about this. There's lots of value here that I do ask that you share, because we're trying to create a pivotal impact in our industry, and just your investment of time is greatly appreciated. So thank you so much. If you've not yet done so, I also ask that you subscribe to our monthly newsletter. Of course, the link is in the show notes below. And that way, yeah, you can be notified of different things that our industry professionals are doing. Some of it's mental health, some of it's advice in industry, some of it's promos on certain products. There's lots of cool stuff going on in there. So again, it's a Truck Focus newsletter. It releases the first of every month. And yeah, it's just another way that we're connecting you with our industry professionals. So really highly recommend that you register to that. And yeah, I hope you have a really great day. And thank you so much again for your investment in time. Really appreciate that you hopped on the podcast. And yeah, let's create a pivotal impact. Bye.